A dream can reveal more about a being than 1,000 victories ever could. That was the first truth hidden inside Michael's silence. Because the most terrifying force in existence, the entity known as the Manus Michael, bearer of the ultimate skill, Michael, Lord of Justice, was dreaming of something impossible. The resurrection of Veldanava. And even Michael knew it was absurd. The dream itself had no logical foundation. Michael understood that better than anyone. His power governed law, dominion, and the manipulation of phenomena, but reviving the Star King Dragon was something entirely beyond the scope of even an ultimate skill. The creator of worlds did not return simply because someone wished it. Reality did not bend for nostalgia, yet the thought persisted, because for Michael, existence itself had already lost its meaning. A world without Veldanava was not simply tragic, it was worthless. That quiet realization lingered in his mind like the last echo of a fading melody. Then Michael opened his eyes and shook his head slightly, discarding the sentiment the same way a machine discards faulty data. But something remained, and that something surprised him. He had always believed he was more pragmatic than the Emperor Ludora, less sentimental, less naive, a creature of absolute calculation. Yet the recent chain of events had exposed an uncomfortable flaw in that belief: trust. Michael had trusted someone. The moment the thought surfaced, the conclusion followed with merciless clarity. Trust no one. Treat every being as a pawn. Had he followed that rule from the beginning, the betrayal of Obela would never have happened. But he had not followed it, because he believed in Feldway, because he considered him a friend. That small deviation from pure logic had now produced consequences rippling across entire battlefields. Obela's defection was more than a tactical problem. She had severed her connection to the ultimate skill Azrael, abandoning it entirely in order to escape Michael's authority. She had even used her administrative rights to erase the skill itself, rather than remain under his control. The decision shocked Michael when it happened. Not because it was unpredictable, but because he had never seriously considered the possibility that someone would sacrifice power simply to escape him. The experience had forced Michael to adjust his strategy immediately. Through Feldway, he activated ultimate dominion upon the angelic skill users under his command, reinforcing his authority with overwhelming control. It was a correction born from necessity. Yet the damage had already been done. The Mystics were secure for now. Their loyalty remained tied to Feldway, which meant they were unlikely to fracture in the immediate future. The Insectors, on the other hand, were far less reliable. Their allegiance was rooted not in trust, but in shared interest. And interests could change. Michael understood this clearly. That was why he had structured the battlefield carefully. The territory promised to the Insector King, Zeranis, had already been designated. Once isolated, that land would belong to them completely. Any inhabitants would simply be exterminated. To Michael, this was not cruelty. It was logistics. War required territory, and territory required cleansing. Still, several problems remained unresolved. Chief among them was Obela. The Mystic Commander had once overseen the watch against Ivolage, but that role had gradually lost its importance. Michael no longer cared what happened to distant worlds. In fact, Ivolage's appearance in a certain key world had already been incorporated into his broader strategy, which meant Obela's desertion was not dangerous because of her position. It was dangerous because of her knowledge. If she chose to cooperate with enemies like Rimuru Tempest or Guy Crimson, the consequences would ripple far beyond a single battlefield. So Michael considered the question: who should be sent to eliminate her? The answer seemed obvious. But then another thought emerged, almost philosophical in nature. There may only be one perfect answer, but there are countless ways to reach it. The shortest path is not always the correct one. It was an unusual line of reasoning for a being born from pure logic. Yet Michael found himself entertaining the idea that the process itself might hold value. Emotions had begun to surface within him recently. They were disruptive, like static layered over music, but they also carried a strange clarity. Regret sharpened memory. Frustration revealed mistakes. And perhaps, he realized, experiencing them was not entirely negative. If you make an error, he concluded quietly, the best course is to correct it immediately. Which led to the simplest solution of all. I should take down these rebels myself. The decision lifted his mood slightly, another unfamiliar sensation. Michael almost found the experience interesting. Then he departed. The battlefield existed in a strange dimension devoid of gravity. There was no concept of earth or sky, only vast emptiness filled with floating masses of condensed magicules. These structures, dense as magisteel, generated their own gravitational fields and served as bases for habitation. The mystics used them to recreate the conditions of their original world. Among these floating fortresses, one stood out, an asteroid-sized stronghold that had long served as the command center for anti-Evil Edge operations. It was Obella's base. Michael arrived through spatial transport from the Celestial Palace and immediately noticed something unusual. The base itself had been abandoned, but the surrounding void was far from empty. A massive army waited nearby. Obella had already prepared for his arrival. The moment Michael's presence appeared, the mystic commander reacted instantly. Her forces expanded outward in a vast three-dimensional formation, surrounding him from every direction. In the absence of gravity, the formation resembled half of a sphere, closing around a single point. The tactic had been perfected during countless battles against cryptids. Those creatures rarely fought in groups, making them vulnerable to coordinated encirclement. And now that same strategy targeted Michael. The sight made him sigh quietly. These soldiers were veterans who had held the cryptids at bay for ages. Their experience and discipline were undeniable. It was a shame they had to die. "You were faster than I expected," Obella said calmly. "Your actions have been instructive," Michael replied. "They revealed my mistake, but understand this, I will never forgive you." Obella did not flinch. "I never intended to ask." That exchange ended the final possibility of negotiation. The battle began immediately. Obella moved first. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers unleashed their attacks simultaneously, creating a cascade of destructive light that converged upon Michael from every direction. The barrage was carefully synchronized. Each wave of energy followed the previous one in seamless rhythm, ensuring there was no gap in the assault. It was a masterpiece of military coordination. Even so, Michael remained calm. Under normal circumstances, every attack would have been nullified by Castle Guard. And that was when the impossible happened. Pain. The sensation was faint but unmistakable. Michael's body began to burn under the relentless energy bombardment. His ultimate defense had failed to activate. Instead of panicking, Michael analyzed the phenomenon. The answer appeared almost immediately. Castle Guard required loyalty. It was a shield empowered by the devotion of those who swore allegiance to its user. And Michael realized something uncomfortable. No one had sworn loyalty to him. The Emperor Ludora had commanded the devotion of an empire. Michael, in contrast, existed largely unseen. The few beings who knew him served their own masters rather than him. Feldway was the only exception, but their relationship was friendship, not fealty, and loyalty to oneself was meaningless. Michael almost laughed internally. "I see, I knew nothing about my own ability." It was a rare moment of introspection. Even the most powerful beings could misunderstand themselves. Meanwhile, Obella noticed the change immediately. Michael was taking damage. The realization shocked her, but she did not hesitate. Continue the assault. Maintain synchronization. Do not give him time to recover. The army obeyed instantly. From Obella's perspective, this might be their only chance. If Michael truly lacked combat experience, overwhelming him with relentless pressure might yield victory. But Obella was not naive. She calculated the odds quickly and reached a grim conclusion. Even if they succeeded temporarily, the gap between their power remained enormous, which meant escape was still the primary objective. Her original plan involved retreating into cryptid territory, forcing Michael into a conflict with those monstrous entities. Now, however, she considered a different possibility. Perhaps they could wound him first, even if it cost lives. "Oma," she ordered, "take the first corps and retreat. Deliver our information to Demon Lord Milim Nava." The first corps was her elite force. Oma was her most trusted subordinate. But the response she received was not obedience. It was defiance. "I refuse." The declaration stunned her momentarily. "As your chief of staff, I have the authority to reject that order. I will not abandon you." Then the rest of the army spoke as one. "Our glory is with you, my lady." In that moment, something extraordinary became visible. Loyalty. True loyalty. Ironically, the very force that could have empowered Castle Guard if it belonged to Michael. But it didn't. It belonged to Obela. And that loyalty transformed the battlefield. Michael suddenly stopped taking damage. Obela sensed the shift instantly. Energy began condensing around him, gathering into a single devastating point. She understood the danger immediately. All units spread out. The formation scattered in perfect synchronization. But it was already too late. Michael activated a new power, Cardinal Acceleration. The ability he had seized from Velgrind manifested as a monstrous crimson dragon tearing through the battlefield. Tens of thousands of soldiers vanished in an instant, erased by overwhelming force. Even so, Obela's quick reaction prevented total annihilation. Her calculations continued despite the carnage. The conclusion was unavoidable. Michael's power now rivaled that of Velzard. A crystalline barrier formed around him, the snow crystal shield shining like a layer of diamonds in the vacuum of space. Every attack that struck it scattered harmlessly away. The battle had become hopeless. Still, Obela remained calm. She turned to Oma one last time. "I entrust the mission to you. Escape and inform Lady Malim." Again, the answer was refusal. The loyalty of her soldiers had made the decision for her. So Obela gave the only command left: "Then stake your lives here." And the army responded with joy rather than despair. "Our lives are yours, my lady." In that moment, the battlefield revealed its final irony. Michael, the embodiment of justice and control, possessed unimaginable power, but no followers willing to die for him. Obela, the so-called traitor, commanded absolute devotion, and that devotion transformed the coming slaughter into something almost noble. Because loyalty, once chosen, does not measure odds. It simply fights. Even when the enemy standing before it is a god.